Within 1 decade, the AIDS epidemic in the United States will be gone. Think of that. Did you ever think you were going to hear that? No, did you ever think you were going to hear that? The work they've done on AIDS is incredible. It's an incredible thing. When they told me that, it's just shattering. It breaks your heart what's happened. But think of it, in 10 years, the AIDS epidemic will be eradicated. So great.
All right, this week, the Log Cabin Republicans, the group that represents the LGBT conservatives in this country, endorsed Donald Trump for president in 2020. It was a surprising move from a group that declined to endorse him back in 2016. In a Washington Post op-ed, the group's leaders wrote that Trump has taken, quote, bold actions that benefit the LGBT community, including his commitment to ending the spread of HIV/AIDS. You heard him reference that in that rally. They also credited Trump with removing gay rights as a wedge issue from the old Republican playbook. Joining me now is Charles Moran, a spokesman for the Log Cabin Republicans, and political consultant Jimmy Williams. Great to have both of you with us. Charles, if I can begin with you, make the case for us. I think a lot of people might be watching this with a little bit of surprise, and we're going to run through the list of why that is the case. But make the case for us why you think President Trump and his administration have been good for advancing the rights of the LGBT community in this country.
Thanks so much for having me on this morning. I won't get into his record, which was clearly LGBT supportive when he was a private citizen and a businessman and a philanthropist in New York. But since becoming president, Donald Trump has protected the rights of gays and lesbians throughout this country. He's kept in place a number of policies that have prevented discrimination that were signed by previous presidents. In addition, he's tackled the twin issues of ending the spread of HIV/AIDS in 10 years, which you referenced in his speech from the other night, but also by advancing a cause to end the criminalization of homosexuality internationally. And this is something that's just so bold because he's using the weight of the United States government and our commitment to democracy, peace, and freedom throughout the world to prevent our LGBTQ brothers and sisters from facing prosecution, which exists in over 71 countries across the globe.
All right, Jimmy, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that. What do you make of the case that was just outlined there?
Well, let me get into his President Trump's record, as Charles doesn't want to. Since Trump became president, he's established, rule-made, or promulgated rules, or met with virulently homophobic leaders in the White House 123 times. Not 100 times, not 23 times, 123 times. And in fact, in the first year of his presidency, he did it 59 times. That ramped off in 2018. He since ramped it back up. In fact, yesterday, the Trump Department of Justice sent an amicus brief to the Supreme Court of the United States saying that transgendered Americans don't have the right to be not discriminated against in the workplace. They did that yesterday, the same day that this idiotic op-ed hit the Washington Post. I appreciate the fact that President Trump is trying to decriminalize homosexuality across the world. The problem is homosexuality is not decriminalized, or being fired for being gay is not decriminalized in 29 states in this country. I cannot go and adopt a child in South Carolina, where I currently am right now as we speak, because the President of the United States granted a waiver to South Carolina back in January of this year, saying that adoption agencies in the state can say no to gay people trying to adopt. So I don't want to hear any BS crap about the fact that the president is stemming AIDS and is making homosexuality something great and wonderful and Dorothy and the Rainbow Bridge across the world, when in fact right here in the United States he has declared war on the LGBTQ community. I appreciate the fact that Charles doesn't want to get into his record, but let's get into his record because it sucks.
All right, so Charles, let's go through some of those specific things, and I want to read you some of these things. Trump opposes federal LGBTQ non-discrimination bill citing poison pills. Democrats reintroduced the Equality Act in March. The president opposes that. He opposed the bill that would add sexual orientation and gender identity to federal civil rights law to prevent discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people. Currently, as we heard there, the legal situation for the LGBTQ community changes dramatically at state borders. In the absence of a national law, at least 20 states have enacted LGBTQ discrimination protections. You've even had the CEO of the National LGBTQ Advocacy Group, GLAAD, say that Trump's opposition to the Equality Act further cements the administration's legacy of being the most anti-LGBTQ government in recent memory. It's hard to look at this president and say he has advanced gay rights when we've just listed to you his opposition for that bill of equality.
Well, I think it's comical that the extreme left and the mainstream media that is trying to promulgate this Trump derangement syndrome of him being the most anti-LGBT president, when you had people like Bill Clinton who signed the Defense of Marriage Act, who signed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, when you had people like even President Bush who was pushing a federal ban on gay marriage and tried to eliminate marriage equality. This revisionist history is just simply not true.
Okay,
and if you look
that's
at things
with all due respect, and I'm not. With all due respect, that's hold on. That's a little bit of a whataboutism. I'm asking you.
It's not a whatabout. You said in the setup, and it was referencing articles saying that he's the most anti-LGBT president in history, and that is clearly not the case.
So answer the specifics.
True.
Answer the specifics that I just laid out for you. Just 1 second. I'm going to get you a chance in just a second.
Okay.
But go ahead, Charles. Answer the specifics about why he will not support the equality bill.
Because the Equality Bill contains a number of clauses and provisions that are violating of other areas of the Constitution. And that's part of the problem, is the Democrats ramrodded this Equality Bill through without any kind of input from Republicans. They were just trying to push forward a piece of legislation that they knew had no chance, that there was no discussion with Republicans, there was no consultation. And a result of that, it was just part of the continued grandstanding of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in the House and the Senate, where it really didn't actually try to address some of the problems. Employment non-discrimination is something that we need to continually address. President Obama was not able to get it done, and nothing we have seen is going to be able, in legislation introduced, is going to rectify that situation. And in some of the issues that you had just addressed, in a lot of them, especially with specifically the case of the labor announcement that came out 2 or 3 days ago, the proposed rules change. Again, it does nothing to actually repeal any existing protections that the LGBT community currently enjoys under the law.
Right,
that's a lie.
Jimmy, go ahead.
It's not a lie. It's not a lie. It's not.
That is a lie.
Jimmy, what do you
Title
Jimmy,
VII.
hold on, guys.
Charles,
Guys,
Charles,
just 1
here's
second.
what we're going to
Jimmy,
do.
It's not a lie.
Here's what we're going to do, Charles. We're going to, since you think whataboutism is okay, let's do whataboutism. What about the fact that Donald Trump, before he became president a decade ago, was for gay marriage? Then when he was running for president, he met with, it said on Christian Broadcast Network that in fact he thought that Obergefell was a bad decision, that this should be left to the states, and that he was going to appoint Supreme Court justices that would overturn Roe and handle traditional marriage in a proper way. That's what he said. What did he do? He appointed 2 Supreme Court justices that may very well do that. So I don't want to hear any of this crap about Barack Obama and George Bush and Bill Clinton and George Washington. They're not president. This guy's president. And he is a racist, homophobic bigot. He is absolutely awful for our community. And the fact that you're supporting him is just shameful. I mean, it's absolutely shameful.
Jimmy, let me read you a little bit.
Jimmy,
let me read you a little bit. Hold on, Jimmy. Let me read you a little bit from this Washington Post op-ed where they talked about the economic impact that has been had on the community by this president. The administration's aggressive negotiations on trade deals have preserved LGBTQ jobs. His hardline on foreign policy has protected LGBTQ lives. What benefits all Americans benefits the LGBTQ community as we cross every racial, socioeconomic, religious, and cultural divide. They also say the president's tax cuts have put and helped keep food on the table for LGBTQ families. Do you disagree with that?
Let me answer that. Let me talk about that. Let me talk about that. I appreciate that the president cut my taxes. And I appreciate that when I was a Senate staffer for almost 7 years, I passed a lot of those same trade bills that made goods coming into America a lot cheaper for all Americans. None of that matters to me if I don't have a job because I've been fired. I cannot pay taxes if I don't have a job. I cannot pay less taxes or more taxes if I don't have a job because I live in a state where it's okay to fire me for being gay, and it is in South Carolina. I cannot afford cheap underwear or nice TV from South Korea if I don't have a job to pay for those things. So I don't want to hear about the tax cut helping gays. I don't want to hear about trade bills affecting and helping gays. I would like to know why it is that I can be fired in my state for being gay, and the guy to the opposite of me, Charles, thinks that it's something that we shouldn't even worry about. That is something that's, what's the big deal? It's a big deal when you get fired for being gay, Charles.
I just said that employment non-discrimination continues and needs to be part of the LGBT broader agenda.
And you objected to the House bill.
Yeah, guys,
you objected to the House bill.
I appreciate both your opinions, and I apologize because we are out of time, but we will continue to have this conversation because, as I said, it is an important one to have. Jimmy Williams,
Thank you.
Charles Moran, thank you both very much.
Thank you.